Tonight is the first Sunday in February. And on the first Sunday in February, we like to do the opportunity to those who have a birthday in February, if they would like to come up and put a penny in the bank that goes to the Round Rock Children's Home for every year that you're around. Is any birthdays in February?
Yes.
We have one in February?
We do have one in February.
Uh-oh.
Sing, do I?
No, we'll sing to you. Now, I do know the only way to validate on a tree how old it is to saw it in half and count the rings, but how many, any other birthdays this month? Huh? Is Kimberly in here? Okay, I'd roll on without it. Is your birthday in February?
No, it's mine.
Oh, it's yours.
But he likes putting the change in the bank a lot more than I do.
I see. Is your birthday in February?
Angela Cross, Petty John.
Ah. Well, Kimmy's birthday's in February, but I have no change in my pocket.
February 6th. Make sure to razz her about it.
All right, so since you're here,
I am here.
go ahead and sing happy birthday to ourselves. Ready?
Let's do it.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to both of you. Happy birthday to you. We won't ask you to validate your age or show an ID. Huh? Is there another verse? Well, apparently I am unaware of the second verse.
And I forgot the page and the words.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
No one will not do. It is salvation. That's all you have to.
Thank you for leading me in that.
Anniversaries in February. No February anniversaries? It's not really the marriage kind of month now, is it? It's Valentine's Day, yeah. Yeah, only in Vegas, baby. I'm kidding. James chapter 5. James chapter 5. No, we won't finish it this week. We're going to look at 1 through 6. But we should get short. Shh. Shh. Say nothing if it's short. We'll see about the short part. James chapter 5. 1 through 6. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your misery which is coming upon you. Your riches have rotten, and your garments have become moth-eaten, and the gold and silver has rusted, and the rust will be witnesses against you, and will consume your flesh like fire. It is in the last days that you have stored up your treasure. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mow your fields, and which has been withheld, but it cries out against you, and the outcry of those who did the harvest reached the ear of the Lord of the Sabbath. You have lived luxuriously on the earth, and have lived a life of wanton pleasure. You have fattened your hearts in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and put to death the righteous man, and he does not resist you. All right, this passage now, where we pick up. A couple weeks ago, we looked at the individuals that say, come, let us travel to a faraway city. And then James goes, this is when they don't say, but if God is willing or if God allows. And the indication is that they did so having no plan of God within their plan. They went to the foreign city. They went to go make their money. They went to go get wealthy, but not involving God in the planning mechanism at all. And James reminds the individuals, hey, look, you are merely vapor. When you think about our lives, it's very transitory in the scope of eternity, in the gap of eternity. 50, 60, 70, 100 years. It's just a blip. As a matter of fact, it's the lip. It's the blip. It's not even that. It's a very short part of time. And that is the problem in a lot of people's thinking is we believe that what we're doing here is the end-all, be-all, when actually we ought to be living for how we're going to live in eternity. And a lot of people get their focus on this. Now, when I read this, I used to watch these shows, and it drives Steph nuts, disaster prepper shows, and Prepper Castle, and Prepper for, it's just because it's not that I lean that direction, but I just like watching people and the mindset involved. And if one guy spent $150,000 in credit cards because he believed that the Mayan calendar was correct and that the world would come to an end in 2012, and he spent all this money on food and bullets and ammo. And I'm not knocking the bullets and ammo thing. I like to shoot. But he spent all his money on this stuff believing that the earth was going to come to an end in 2012. I don't have to pay it back. The economy will collapse, and therefore they won't come looking for me. I bet he really regrets that now, doesn't he? They planned, they prepped, they built this stuff. I mean, one dude was making caches that he was dropping off in the ocean, but he wouldn't put a beacon inside of it so he could find it. He would just go down and dive for it and go looking for hours. I've not understood that if you're in a post-apocalyptic era where you had the luxury time of snorkeling for the stuff you dropped off a boat. I think about it. In 2,000 years, some guy's going to be snorkeling and go, look what I found. And they prep and they plan for something that's occurring, not living in the current. One, also not believing in God, who has the ability to preserve them even in the midst of great turmoil. Because here's the thing, folks, the church has gone through periods of great turmoil. I was watching an article today on Fox News online, and it talks about how Christianity is being persecuted more now than it has within the 20th century. There's more Christian persecution worldwide today than there has been in the last 200 years, 300 years. And there are people so worried about that they spend their whole time doing it. Here in this text, it's talking about how the wealthy have so perverted in their mindset that they're prepping for themselves even in the midst of time when they should be thinking somewhere else. A lot of people use this passage to beat up on rich people. The Bible isn't condemning a rich man here. It's not condemning having wealth. He's condemning having wealth, not understanding the fact that you are but vapor. You are but mist. You've spent your time consuming these things and getting these things to be rich and luxurious and exploring all types of pleasure at the extent of living godly. Let's take a look at this passage. Come now, you rich, weep, howl, for your miseries which are coming upon you. Weep, knowing that you are facing impending judgment. You ever watched a kid? I used to hate this when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, I usually got 3 whippings. I got one at school. Then I got one when I got home and told Mom what happened, because I knew I had to tell Mom because I knew the principal would call her. Because I knew that the letters the first couple of times were not getting home because they left them with me. That was a mistake. That wasn't not. So then I get a whipping from Mom. And then she would say the words that struck fear into every little boy's heart. Won't you just go to your room and wait till your daddy gets home? I'd rather you shoot me now. I'd rather die. Because I know what's happening, because you hear Dad, the car driveway comes into the driveway. And I began weeping because I knew impending judgment was coming. Because it was followed by, guess what your son did today? Have you ever noticed when you're in trouble, you're always the other parent's child? Yeah, that happens. Weep as though one is under impending judgment. And we all have seen that. I can understand this. Look, I knew him. You could hear him coming down the hall. It wasn't really that loud, but when you're like 8, yeah, anyhow. So it's not a pretty picture. How? Cries of extreme grief. Cries of great mourning. Not a howling. No. as you've all seen people that have had something come upon them, some great calamity, and you see them being weep and howling uncontrollably. This is the picture of the rich. This is going to fall upon the rich. Now, this seems odd. Why? Because in a lot of cases, wealthy people have an advantage socially to where they can escape a lot of these things. Right? We watched a murder mystery last night. I swear, Stephanie, she loves watching these shows. I think she's plotting my own murder because she takes tons of notes and then she watches these shows. And I found a notebook one day. But anyhow, I'm teasing. But this guy, he planned to kill his wife, paid $80K to kill his wife, and spent 8 years in prison. If I'd have planned to kill my wife, I wouldn't spend 8 years in prison. I'd be 80 years in prison. Why? Because there's the advantage that people have that are wealthy. And yet, in this situation, notice that the picture is not that of pleasance. Painful. Your misery, hardship, and affliction. Why? Because judgment is coming upon you, and that judgment is sure. Notice what James is doing. He's painting a very bleak picture for those who have wealth. Why? Well, first of all, folks, when you're poor, and you know you're poor, there's not a lot more that people can do to you to increase your labor or anything like that. You'll see here in this passage, these guys quit paying their laborers. If you quit paying your laborers, there's not very little more that you can make a person poor. But if you take a rich person and make them poor, there's a great disparity in that lifestyle, right? And so that is the imagery that is coming upon these individuals. Your riches have rotten. Your garments have become mouthy, and your gold and silver have become rusted. A lot of this is the imagery in the ancient Near Eastern world. There's three types of way of one can be rich. You can be rich in food, you can be rich in fine clothing, you can be rich in monetary wealth. And they believe this is what he's hitting on. The food that you have stored away, all your disaster prep supplies, somebody else has gotten in and eaten them. All that gold and silver you've been buying because the economy is going to collapse has rusted. Gold doesn't really rust, and neither does silver. The imagery is that it is of worthlessness and of no value. It has gotten to the point that it is decaying in and of itself. It is like you're holding on to, and think about it, which would you rather have, a rusty wrench or a new wrench? I've got some rusty wrenches there, my grandfather's, and I won't part with them. But if I were to go to sell them at a pawn shop, to the guy at the pawn shop, it's a rusty wrench. He'll give me maybe $1 for it. The gold and silver that they have put away, the food that they have put away, all these things that they have put away to live life and to weather the storm is gone and is no more. And they have put their faith in the transitory things of this world instead of their faith in the intransitory faith in Jesus Christ that alters a life. It's in a thing. Their faith is in a thing that a thief can steal, fire can consume, or someone else can take. Instead of putting their faith in something that no one else can take from you. And this is the habit of the rich. This is the habit of this level of rich. Because one of the things that he's believed to be talking about, there's an argument between scholars, that he is addressing Jews right before Jerusalem is sacked. And the wealthy and the wealth is going to be carted off by the Romans. Or the fact that he's addressing a bunch of wealthy individuals that are within the church that are utilizing the church for more nefarious means than just being godly members of the body of Christ. I think that tends to be more with that, but just give you the two views on that. Your garments are moth-eaten. Maybe y'all ever went to go get a sweater made of wool, put it on, no stinking moths have been at it again? Your finery, the clothes that distinguish you from everyone else now makes you look like everyone else. All the stuff that you put your interest in, your effort in, your tireless work in is consumed. And we look at this and go, man, these guys are crazy. But yet, we get ourselves caught up in this. We have this thing amongst Americans called the keeping up with the Joneses, right? where people buy more than they take in, where people consume more than they take in. And we believe that somehow it's a competition to whoever dies with the most stuff wins. And the fact of the matter is, whoever dies with the most stuff doesn't win. What matters when you die is what relationship you have with Jesus Christ. And if your relationship is more to do with gold and finery and food, then you're in trouble. And James is addressing this to the church and to the church in Jerusalem. Look, it's easy to look that these things will save you. That was the problem with the children of Israel all the way throughout. The reason why God uses Gideon and only 300 men, the answer is because you will say that it is your hand that delivers you, not God's. See, because when we push towards the wealth, he's not trashing wealthy people, nor is he trashing the pursuit of wealth. He's trashing the pursuit of wealth that has no existence, place, or concept where God is first in its pursuit. See, notice if you tie it back to the last passage, I will go to such and such city, I will make my wealth, and all will be right with the world. Well, wait. That's if God wills you'll go. Because you are nothing more than vapor. And as vapor, your life comes on and then gone. Remember, I used the analogy of on a cold morning, we go, and the vapor comes out of your mouth. That's the vapor being discussed. Count how long that stuff lasts in the air. And for some folks and for some people within the church, they spend that short span pursuing all these things, believing that that will deliver them in times of trouble. And all of us have seen that. We see this from this morning's sermon. This lady spent all she had to be delivered of her pain and agony, and nothing happened, and she was broke. Let's continue on. The rust will witness against you and will consume your flesh like a fire, and it will last. And in the last days you will have stored up treasure. Behold, we'll stop there. The rust will witness against you. Now again, gold doesn't rust, but it's an indicator of, look, this stuff that has tarnished will show where your endeavors have lied, and it's more in line with a figurative aspect of a literal thing. It is going to be like your flesh being consumed. It's going to prove that you have done all this for your own folly. And your body will suffer because of it, because it has no value. There's nothing beyond the physicalness of it. And then when it gets taken away, there's nothing there. But notice the charge. He's going to give 3 specific charges coming out here now. Starting in verse 4. Behold, the pay of your laborers who mow your fields, which has been withheld by you. So not only are these individuals wealth seekers, but they are cheats and robbers of individuals who do hard labor of them. This is the problem of those who pursue ungodly things for ungodly purposes, for the purpose of attaining wealth, for their own safety and security. You begin to rob those who work for them. And this is a charge against them. They are stealing from the laborers to maintain their wealth. We see this with the guys in Wall Street that have built. Bernie Madoff is one of them. No telling how many people's retirement monies he has made off with and squandered and lost due to Ponzi schemes and bad dealings and poor accounting and treacherous and wicked men. In church I was licensed in, very well-respected individual. His wife is the sister of a very, very influential man within the Southern Baptist Convention. And everyone really respected this individual, and he was put in charge of the finances for the school, and he was put in charge of the accounting for the church. And he had several businesses, and one day the FBI came and arrested him for embezzlement, and he embezzled millions of dollars. Fortunately not from the church, but millions of dollars from his investors within his 2 businesses. He's still in jail. And his family is in ruins. See, it happens even within churches. And everybody swore he was a good, godly man. And he was. He made very poor decisions because he believed that he could get away with it and no one would find out. These individuals seem to really not care if people find out. They are going to take what they want and pay whom they want. And it doesn't matter if they cheat people or not. They are going to get their reserves. And you say, well, what's the other charges? Well, let's take a look before we get there. But the cries out against you, and the outcry of those who did the harvest has reached the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath. Because of your treachery and their crying out, the first charge against you has reached unto the Lord himself. That's not that certain cries make to God's heaven and God hears certain cries. The indication is that the severity of the crime against these individuals, the Lord has taken notice of. And has taken notice of these individuals. And we will see just within the judgment here in a section that their lives are shortly lived here. See, because we forget at times, we're but vapor. And we have two pursuits in life. We can either pursue the worldly things here and the money that's here and all the cool stuff that comes with the money. And we see this with pro football players who make a ton of money, and then when they quit football, do they have any money left? Not a dime. Spend it all. I don't know how you spend $1 million at a club in a night. I'd like to know how you do that. I mean, seriously, that's beyond nuts. And yet they can do it. I'd like to know how. You see this in politics. You see this with folks in the political realm and folks that do this and their handlers all the time. We see politicians get caught up in embezzlement of funds, embezzlement of activities. Why? Because they believe they will not get caught. And they pursue the worldly things because money's cool. We like money. Money helps us buy cool stuff. And money in itself is not bad, but the pursuit of the money to the neglect of the walking with God, to where you cheat other people of God, to where you will lie and embezzle and falsify documents, to where you can maintain the money, but yet you have no relationship with God while you are vapor, is an amazement. It really is an amazement. It's an arrogance that I think only human beings can possess. God has to look down from heaven and go, you have brain damage. It's like watching kids fight over air, the color of air. And I was a young kid at one time. My brother and I used to fight over nothing. Because my parents told us we were fighting over nothing. That's how we knew. You have lived luxuriously on the earth and have led a life of wanton pleasure. Not that you've lived a nice life, a comfortable life. I don't want to take a sip of water. Still ice cold in my nice cup. Okay, it's not cold. It's still wet, though. You've lived a life of luxury on the earth and led a life of wanton pleasure. You have denied yourself nothing. You have lived in such a way that your life reflects an absolutely hedonistic lifestyle where no pleasure has been denied you, where no opportunity to do whatever you want has been denied you. You have lived in such a way that you have experienced, and go back and read what Solomon has read when he talks about all the things he has learned, and there's nothing under the sun. And instead of taking their cue from Solomon, who says, I've tried pleasure and it was nothing, and I've tried this pursuit of wisdom and it was nothing, and I pursued all the things that a man can pursue under the sun, and it was meaningless. Instead of taking their cue being good Jews from the smartest Jew that ever lived, they said, well, I want to give that a try. I want to see if I can beat old Solomon's record. You know what you hear right before a redneck dies? Hey, y'all, watch this. You know what you hear right before his buddy dies? Shoot, I can do that better. Solomon did the, hey, y'all, watch this. And then these folks go, shoot, I can do that better. They lived in such a way that there was nothing that their wealth did not keep them from experiencing, or perversion that they did not embrace. Wanton pleasure. Why? Because who's their master? Is it God or is it money? Is it sacrifice or is it pleasure? Is it fine clothes or is it a life of servitude in the work of God? And that's the charge. You have lived in such a way that your life does not reflect some of what you say on a Sunday or what you would say on a Saturday. You have lived a life of debauchery with what God has given you. And that's the thing, folks. Wealth is a gift of God's. Not plural, but God says in possessive. Think about that. I was almost about ready to say Walmart's. You have fattened your heart in the day of slaughter. Now, this is a pretty interesting statement. Imagine, if you will, the imagery is of a cow eating in lush pastures right in front of the slaughterhouse. Because when that cow hits a certain point, guess where it's going to go? Into the slaughterhouse. You have fattened up yourselves only to become slaughter for someone else. This is why they tie it back to the Roman invasion and to the sacking of Jerusalem. See, you have built all this wealth so the Romans can come and take it away. I think it's simply, as other passages have put it, and I think it's in Ecclesiastes as well, you have obtained this wealth not for your pleasure, but for someone else to enjoy. Matter of fact, it is in Ecclesiastes. You have condemned and put to death the righteous man, and he does not resist you. Whether by not paying him his wages and he dies a slow death of hunger, whether abusing your position of power and being able to strike against the worker that you have and causing him harm where he cannot work and he dies a slow death, or whether by the fact that you just took him out and you could pay to have it happen and make him an offer you can't refuse. Any of those. You have taken the servant. You have taken and condemned a righteous man who does not possess the ability to fight back against you. And off to the gallows he goes quietly. This is the extent of the perversion one has when one seeks only the material things of this world and forgets that he is but a vapor on this earth. For as long as we live short lives. Tomorrow, if something happened to me tonight, tomorrow the world will keep spinning even though Ashley Payne may not be here. And I know that's a radical concept that it will keep going because in my head, I keep the world turning. Or at least make it interesting. That's a pretty arrogant statement, is it not? Yet we live as though the world turns and turns for us. And the fact of the matter is the world turns, whether you're on it or not. And there have been people that have lived a life like this throughout history. And their wealth has gone on to other people. And their crimes have been committed against those, and they are accounting for it or have accounted for it. This is what happens when one pursues the things of wealth, not understanding that there is a God with whom you will serve or one day stand before. Notice if you go back to the other passage, it talks about, hey, look, we will go to the city, we will make ourselves wealthy. And no plan of God involved in there. Same concept here. No fear of God in this passage. There is no fear of God of this individual in this passage. Because why? My money will save me. My fine clothes will distinguish me. And I have disaster prepped, enough food and ammo to keep the zombies away for years. And the fact of the matter is, all those things can be taken away in an instant. You say, oh no, I'm prepped. F5 sucked the concrete right off your foundation. And all the stuff you have in your house will be gone. This is a life that does not recognize the very transitory nature of man and his relationship with an eternal being who hears the cries of those who are persecuted. But what it also does, it should also bring an aspect of hope that when we are persecuted at the hands of individuals like this, we also are aware that they do not escape the eye of God. That while they may live in such a manner and do such horrific things to others, they do not escape the judgment that awaits them. It is just as sure as death for them. See, it's very easy to do. It's very easy to get our eyes locked onto things. Why? Because we start off looking at money as a means by which we can improve our lives. Fine clothes is a way in which we can help make our life a little better. And then when we divorce that from a life that honors God to where that becomes the sole pursuit, and it doesn't have to be money. James is using money here. It can be anything. It can be anything that takes the place of God, where that becomes the all-consuming passion within our life, and that leads us to absorb and participate in all kinds of licentious activity. It doesn't have to be money. James uses money. And that's the danger, because it denies that you are accountable, that we are accountable, that man is accountable to a divine being who will call us to account for how we live a life here on earth and what we do with the wondrous gifts that God gives. And these individuals have much to account for. We are vapor. Our days are very transitory. I'll live to be 100. Great. Compare 100 to an eternity. What do you got? You got a very small equation. We're vapor. And in that time while we are vapor, are we focusing on the master of our life? Or are we focusing on all the material things within our life? And that will always be the struggle for the believer until we go to the other side of glory. But are we focusing on the master? Or are we focused on the cool stuff that comes with life? Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for this opportunity to come before you. We ask you to be with each and every one of us, that as we go about our lives, our daily lives, we ask ourselves continually, are the things that we do for the purpose of honoring you or for the purpose of honoring us? Are they means by which the kingdom is built and grows, or are they means by which we build and grow ourselves? We thank you for all that are here this evening and for your blessing upon them. We ask for your watch care over us as we leave and bring us safely back. We ask these things in your name we pray. Amen. Okay, folks, let's circle up around the pew. I'm going to slide this out of the way. And while y'all move out, I'm going to grab another drink of wet water.